maybe this is like a small piece of advice to any artist or anybody really who's just trying to go into a new thing and wants to try to grow. It's like you have to be willing to take the leap at experimenting in something that you probably haven't done before. You have to do it.
You are now listening to the Creative Juice podcast, brought to you by Entrepreneur.io.
What's up, Indies? Welcome back to the Creative Juice podcast. This is episode 325, and I'm super excited to be here with you today. I'm your host, Jack McCarthy. With me, as always, is Circa to talk today about the number one reason that artists fail to grow. And I think in some ways, part of the reason that Entrepreneur even exists. Cirque, what's up, dude?
Not much, dude. I'm here. I'm ready. I'm here for it.
I'm pumped, man. I'm going to just cut to the chase and say that the number one reason that artists fail to grow, and this goes for all stages of music careers, creative careers, is that they never start. And that's why I mentioned that, like, in a lot of ways, this is part of the reason that Entrepreneur even exists, is to give artists a jumping off point, a roadmap, something to start with. But we wanted to talk today about procrastination and how artists at kind of varying levels of their careers deal with it. And I'd like to kick off with talking about artists who have maybe a library of music, maybe a record, maybe just a handful of songs, and they're really just kind of sitting on it, waiting to do anything. I think we all know musicians that are like this, or maybe have even found ourselves in the position of wanting to get going with something, but not really actually doing anything about it. And then after we talk about that, I want to share some stories about kind of the other side of the spectrum, which is artists who are growing, but maybe have other opportunities that they're just not paying attention to, and some conversations that I've had that are interesting and might inspire you if you're in that position.
Hell yeah, dude. Let's get into it.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to me. Like, I felt like when you and I met in 2017, in a lot of ways, even early days, like, I believed in Entrepreneur because I was like, this seems like a community, a system, a pedagogy, a structure, a company, an organization that is helping artists have a jumping off point, especially for people who are just like, man, I want to start, I want to grow, I want to do something with this, and I need a jumping off point. And I was kind of always inspired by, especially early days, or in particular early days, what you kind of cooked up as a way for artists to kind of take that first dive into actually marketing themselves. But I think that's really important because, like, we as artists procrastinate and stay in creation mode so often. And I think if you're an artist or a band that's looking to get going, that can really kind of handicap your growth, or even kind of keep you from even crossing the starting line.
Lord knows. Lord knows.
Yeah.
I definitely have some interesting anecdotes related to both music and just getting started on things in general. So let's get into it.
Yeah, that's actually I'd love to start there. Like, this goes beyond just music careers too. This has everything to do with businesses as well. Just any kind of business. Think about, I've had so many friends over the years who are like, oh, I want to start a business, or I'm thinking about getting into this kind of entrepreneurial mode that's always been creeping around in my head. And the first thing they ask is like, well, yeah, so I probably need a website and an LLC and And we see that same sort of stuff with artists. I actually was just having a conversation last week with friends of mine that are in a band, and they were like, yeah, we're thinking about, building a label around us and stuff. And I'm like, guys, you really just need to start doing something.
Let's put out a record first.
Yeah.
Before we have a record label.
Yeah, exactly. Or let's get some fans.
Yeah, those all could be very helpful if one day we did want to start a record label.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I'm curious what maybe at the genesis of Entrepreneur, what some of the stories you could share about, like, procrastination and kind of this, like, fear of jumping in with both feet.
Man, like, multiple times in my life, I've come to a point where whatever I'm doing has grown static and rigid and immovable. It's usually when I'm not able to just do everything like that I want to by myself that I start to feel like trapped. And that's where I was when Entrepreneur started. Like I was in a company where I started to feel like, wow, I really know more than the guy who owns this company. Like I really, like I really know what to do a lot more. And all the little things about that guy started to piss me off. And it's just mannerisms and stuff. And I was like, I need to be free. And when I stepped into Entrepreneur, it was like, man, I can execute on so much. And it doesn't involve the opinions of other people. And that's such a freeing thing. It's such a freeing thing to step into something where it can be scary because truly, if you fail, it's your fault. No one else was involved.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like that's been the catalyst for me in epochs of life where I step into something new or I pick up a new skill or something. And so like it can be scary to decide like I'm actually going to go full throttle on this. But it's always been super freeing and revitalizing for me. And so in the early days of Entrepreneur, it was me and a laptop in my attic apartment and just like throwing stuff together. I was like 80% working with clients, 20% trying to like create a scalable thing like online training. But like I chose what my days were. I wrestled with my, challenges by myself and I could choose which challenge to wrestle with next. None of it involved like getting a CPA or an LLC or like Entrepreneurs LLC didn't register until September, but the company started in February, I think, or March, late March, early April.
It's definitely been true of every business I've ever started as well, including my music business.
I'll tell you this, if you didn't register your actual corp until 8 months after you started, your business ain't shit. You're focused on the wrong things. That's obviously not true in all cases. It's just a joke, but it kind of is true.
Yeah.
Yeah. The more you are focused on the things that make you appear like you have a business or are doing this thing, then the less you're going to do the actual thing, I think.
Dude, yeah, it's so true. And I think like to jump off and share some ideas that I have about that stage for a lot of artists, going back to what you were saying about like you were in a company and working with someone that you were like, man, I know more than this person. I feel trapped and stuck. I think a lot of artists, especially people in bands, feel stuck either by the people around them. And we've talked about this more recently on the podcast where like the people around you can hold you back by like their old ideas and their unwillingness to try shit. But also old ideas in and of themselves can hold you back where it's just like, oh, I had a notion or a concept that should have worked. And so I'm going to keep like hammering away at it as if it's going to, whether that's just like, I don't know, I'm going to pick a random one out of the sky, like posting on socials the way that you did 7 years ago or something like that, just a random example. And those kinds of things can hold you back. And what's wild to me is, and maybe this is like a small piece of advice to any artist or anybody really who's just trying to go into a new thing and wants to try to grow, is like you have to be willing to take the leap at experimenting in something that you probably haven't done before. You have to do it. It can be something that is being taught to you or something that someone is coaching you on. It doesn't have to be something you're making up yourself, but more often than not, if you're in a place where you're just not starting, the first step to starting is experimenting.
Yeah, 100%. I have a great recent example, which is that I forget what it was. I think I was working on our website, the Entrepreneur website. And just randomly out of the blue, like I knew about, obviously I did a whole video on like how AI is going to impact the music industry and how I think people just aren't doomer enough or aren't optimistic enough.
Depending on which way you look at it.
Right. Yeah. Like people who say that it'll never do what X artists can do, they're not doomer enough. And the people, the people who think that it's going to ruin everything are not optimistic enough. So I know about AI and all that, but I just haven't used ChatGPT or any other AI tool because ChatGPT is a very cursory example, but any other AI tool to like very extensively. I was working on our website and I started using it. And the code that it spat out for me, CSS and HTML and different solutions, was like really good. And I was like, man, like it can code. It can code really good. I can describe a problem to it and it'll give me, and it's like, it's being able to code with human language. And so cut to like, it's now 6 weeks after that moment, and I know how to program in Python, and I know how to create project structures for applications in Python and import modules and create modules and packages. And I know a lot of Python logic and design plans for Python. So like, yeah, the catalyst for it was just this happenstance thing, but it's crazy how quickly, like obviously because I'm also have the benefit of talking to an LLM, but like how quickly just in like your after hours after work, you can pick up and really move with something. Man, I forget how because I got so excited about the story. What prompted me to start telling that story again?
We were talking about being willing to experiment with new things in order to grow. And I have a really similar story, actually. It was a few months before this happened for you, but a similar sort of vein. When we started building into what eventually became the Indie CRM, and we started building our integrations related to it with things like Shopify and order fulfillment and stuff like that, pieces that hadn't been in place natively in the operating system that we were building into. This was like around August, September of last year. I started doing similar with ChatGPT, where I was like, I don't know how to code. I don't know how to build code and code for APIs and connecting things up. But I just started working on it with ChatGPT. And it's wild how now I'm kind of like this weird little mercenary code hacker guy. I'm not a developer by any stretch, but I've definitely learned a lot in the process. And now I feel like there's stuff where I wouldn't have to go talk to an AI assistant, where I could just build it myself. And how that relates to growth was like, we were able to use that to launch something cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Not only that, I can't describe to you enough how little I knew about any programming language before.
Dude, yeah. Yeah.
But through interacting with the AI, like it gives you an error, or it does something wrong, or it thinks you mean something you didn't. And then like you're forced to troubleshoot that and thereby learn the difference between what you meant and what it did. And then you learn all these other things. So like it accelerates your learning. I don't know about you, but like I hate learning something for 6 months and with no implementation, right? Like they're not doing anything. I'm learning a bunch of underlying theory that I'm not going to remember when it comes time to do the thing. And with LLMs, you can do something impressive, not just coding, but a business plan or executing a social media marketing strategy or building an ad campaign. You can do all of that through natural language and trial and error. And so there's like, maybe there was a point in time where you could say like, oh, I can't get started because I don't know enough. But now there's like really no excuse.
Yeah, 100%. And to bring this back to like indies who might be wanting to get started with marketing themselves so that they can actually grow, so that they can actually get the music that they've been just sitting on or trying to build up catalog for a while, which is often what I hear artists say when they're like, when I ask like, well, what are you focused on for growth? And they say like, well, I'm building up catalog. And it's like, that means you're not doing anything besides making music.
That doesn't mean anything.
Which I get, but it's true.
Hey, wait a minute. What you just said, that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, exactly. But to bring it back to that level, it's like, okay, in the same way that we were using AI experimentally, you can start experimenting with advertising platforms. A different tool, same concept applies here. Start experimenting. There's tons of information out there. You can use AI to find out stuff too. Or you can join us inside Indie Pro and you can learn all about how to run ads to grow a fan base for your music. Just putting that out there. We'll leave a link to Indie Pro in the show notes if you want to join the community. But you can learn all this stuff on your own. You can dig in, you can experiment, and you build the reps as you're experimenting. And then all of a sudden, it doesn't feel like you're in a submarine anymore when you're building an ad campaign. And that's how I used to describe it to people early days when I was first learning how to advertise, or after I first learned how to advertise. I would say, like, yeah, I know that building in an ads manager sometimes feels like you're in a submarine and there's gauges and buttons and dials and you don't know what to push. But really, once you do it a few times, it's not hard.
Yeah, not only that, but like, okay, so just to say that, like, you can't talk to an LLM specifically about music marketing just because there's not a wealth of stuff in its training set about music marketing specifically. General marketing, very much yes. Direct response marketing, which is the style of marketing that we kind of mostly teach, definitely. It knows a lot about that. But that said, like, yeah, like you can talk to, like, let's say you start to understand a little bit about, 90% of what you can learn from us that's going to impact your ability to set up an ad campaign. Even if we didn't teach you how to set up an ad campaign, we just taught you what goes into an ad campaign. Then you went and talked to an LLM. You could talk to it, tell it, here's what I want to do. Here's what I know about what I want to do. Here's what I want to put into the ad campaign. And it can spit you out like CSV that you can upload to Facebook ads and never have to actually, like, so yeah. And that's only going to accelerate like the little things that make doing something new so much more tedious and frustrating and hard. They're all being eroded away. And the excuses to not do something are just becoming less and less.
100%. And speaking of excuses, I think that's a nice sort of transition into where I think this never getting started problem when it comes to growth sort of shows itself at later levels in a music career. And man, I can't tell you over the years how many conversations I've had with artists, artist managers, people on artist teams, assistants, marketing people, you name it. How many times I've had conversations like, well, yeah, we really want to focus on, for example, we really want to focus on selling more merch online, but we just haven't done it. And this is usually in the form of a sales conversation with me and asking, why haven't you done it? Or what's been stopping you from doing it?
What's up with that?
Yeah. What's been stopping you from working with somebody like us at our agency to make it grow, to make it move? And I don't know. I don't have my close rate numbers in front of me, but like, let's say 50% of the time someone's like, yep, let's go. I want to do this. And then 50% of the time someone's like, well, I need to think about it, or I need to talk to the rest of the team, or I really need to ask my manager, or I need to talk to the artist, or I need to get permission from my record label, or my mom, or my dad, or my wife, whatever. And then a year later, I talk to them and it's like, how's that e-commerce growth going for you? Like we got busy with tours and a record release, and he's been in the studio for a while. Music videos, man. Oh, we went on a cruise. Tons of excuses. Again, never starting to grow. And that's about growing a subsector of your business, a different revenue stream in your business that you haven't been pushing on. And that's where I think the never getting started problem comes about. That's more goal oriented as you progress in your career. It's like, okay, I had a goal of growing a different revenue stream, or I had a goal of touring in a different country, or I had a goal of putting out 3 records in a year, whatever it might be. The never getting started when it comes to goals is kind of what happens later on as an artist grows. They miss out on opportunities, or they neglect to take action on additional opportunities going on. You know what I mean?
100%. Yes. Happens quite frequently. Man, Sage, I don't want to make this whole episode about sales psychology, but of course there are instances where someone's trying to sell you something that like truly you should not buy, right? But in most cases, you don't end up in prolonged sales conversations for something you shouldn't buy. Chances are you were seeking out a solution to a problem you had, and you encountered someone who at least has some percentage chance of helping you solve that problem.
Right, totally.
Whether that be a consultant and you're a business, or whether that be a friggin' appliance salesperson and you need a toaster, like whatever it is. And oftentimes, like the objections, really what they're saying is, I have this problem. I deeply do want to solve it. I don't believe that you can solve it for me. Because if they believed you could solve it for them, price is usually less of an issue. And the reason I bring that up is it boils all the way down to selling yourself on an idea. Selling yourself on starting, oftentimes salespeople are just being paid to sell you on the thing you might have been able to sell yourself on.
Yeah.
If you just believed in yourself, dude.
Yeah.
Just believe. Yeah. So sales psychology is very interesting that way.
Dude, that's a really good point, because we last year had a conversation with an artist manager who was saying to us, like, yeah, we want to start selling merch, but I don't really know if the fans will buy it. And lo and behold, we're 9 months later and we haven't talked more with that person about getting that revenue stream built up. And to be honest, like, that revenue stream probably looked like multiple 6 figures, if not 7 figures, just based on the sizes of that group's fan base. Crazy opportunity missed out because of lack of belief.
Yeah. And I mean, like, you can't focus on everything, but yeah, that was particularly hilarious case. I don't feel like I'm speaking to our indie community right now, because they have a lot of fit fawn. They have a lot of get up and go, right? I feel like if you haven't clicked off yet, I'm talking to someone who is experiencing these problems, right? And so that's just to say that so much of actually being able to accomplish things, and this is universal, it's not specific to music industry or independent music careers, is just actually believing that you could, right? It's having the audacity to believe, like, I might be successful if I tried. Right? I actually might be able to figure out if I try. Like, maybe I don't know it immediately, but I probably can figure it out. And so much in life, and not like, I know people who panic whenever something happens that could eventually be negative in their life. And I often don't panic simply because I'm stupid enough to believe that whatever comes my way, I'm probably just going to figure it out. And if I don't figure it out, it probably wasn't figurable out. Yeah.
No, that's a really good point. I mean, I definitely, as a chronic worrier, fall closer to the camp of,
we're all going to die.
We're all going to die. Yeah. However, like, over a few years, trying to work in a more optimistic sort of worldview and a figure it out sort of worldview has definitely done wonders for me. And I think accepting that if you experiment and something goes wrong, the sky probably isn't falling. You just are failing forward, And I think that this is true of growing a music career. We see it all the time with our coaching clients. We see it all the time with our agency clients. It's interesting. We were just having a team meeting today and we were talking about success and failure. And it was like, we probably learn more about music marketing and about how to grow a fan base and monetize a fan base more from the things that don't work than the things that do,
Well, yeah, it's because when you start out, you have, it comes from the Latin root decaderis, which means to end. So to terminate, like decide, shares roots with homicide and suicide. It's an old, I think that's an old Dan Kennedy classic for you guys. But so when you decide, you're killing off all other options and going with one. You are literally terminating potential futures. And that's scary for a lot of people, to terminate potentiality and just go and do it. Failure eliminates options on your behalf.
Ooh.
Failure does the deciding for you. It narrows the field of potential futures.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good, man. I kind of want to leave off on that. I hope this episode was inspiring, because that was really sort of the point here, is if you're on the fence about trying something new or trying to get started as it is, trying to find some fans, trying to get going, marketing your music, or trying to seize a new opportunity in your career, especially when it comes to making money, hopefully this episode is the catalyst to getting you off the fence and actually going for it.
Let's go.
We'll see you guys next time. Peace out.
Can y'all really feel us? East Coast, feel us. West Coast, feel me.